Buddy, we got quite a few people showing up, and we expect more to be dropping in since we just started here at 9. I am going to be turning off your video so that we don't lose bandwidth. So don't be alarmed that your video isn't working, and I'm also going to keep you guys muted. So let's use the chat to interact to get started. And if somebody's got something that you feel is a little too difficult to express just in the chat, let us know that, and we'll unmute you and start a conversation. So welcome, Jenna. Welcome, Christiana. And welcome everybody who's dropping in here. And I think we've got one thing that we wanted to start with tonight right off the bat. And that is the concept of how you market your readings, like how you present yourself and the possibilities that you offer as a reader to your clients. Jenna, would you like to get us started with that?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm glad you guys are here and you have made it to, I don't know what time it is in your neck of woods, but Eastern Standard Time. It's 9. It's late. For those of you that have stayed up late and have marked us for your calendar, thank you so much for joining us on this conversation. And thank you, Christiana, for coming and being part of this with me. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about what it means to be a tarot professional, and also talk about some kind of topics. Have questions ready. You can put them in the chat box and we will get to them as we can. Christiana, I know that you said that you wanted to talk about different service options and the difference between laying service options by time and topic. Do you want to talk a little bit about that first?
Yeah, I'll share a little bit about what my journey has been with this, and I was interested in discussing this with you because I've noticed at certain times when I stalk your website, which I do from time to time, I like your website, that you will occasionally offer sort of what I refer to as a specialty reading, where it might have a particular topic. And for me, a reading is a reading is a reading. That's always been the way it is, and I don't tend to let my clients tell me what deck I'm going to use or what spread I'm going to use or what techniques I'm going to use. You don't get to offer that any more than in a restaurant you would get to order, how the chef is going to do things, That's just always how I've been. I figure intuitively, whatever's supposed to come up will come up. So within the past year, I had a dream, and it was about Mercury retrograde, that I should do a special kind of reading just during Mercury retrograde using the energy of Mercury retrograde. And so I put it out there as a special. It was wildly popular. And so this was like a whole new thing that I've never done before. And then the same thing happened for New Year. I got this idea of a reading that I would do only in January. And you had to sign up for it in December because I was only going to do a certain number of them. And it was, again, wildly popular. People were really excited about it. And the process when I'm doing it feels really mystical. And every reading feels really mystical. But there's something about this that feels really led. And so I'm just curious, when you have offered, okay, this is a special career path reading, or how is that for you? How do you figure that out? And is there some special magic that comes into that for you?
Sometimes it's just my capitalist Ferengi spidey senses. One of the best specials I ever did, because unlike you in Florida, up here in the Northeast, we have snowstorms. And last year we had a ton of them. And for me, I have a lot of people that come in and see me. Huge snowstorms and blizzards really impact my bottom line because people don't want to come, if there's even a little bit of snow, people don't want to come out. They don't want to drive. So last year, one of my most popular offerings was what I called the Snow Day Special. And it was a picture of me like in my parka and from Instagram. And I just sent it that day. And I said, listen, I have 9 slots today. 10% off, phone only. You're stuck at home. I'm stuck at home. Let's get some readings done. Wildly popular, booked out in maybe an hour. So I'll do those. And actually, Christiana, I was thinking about all of the federal workers that are furloughed and they're just sitting home all day. So I was thinking about doing a furloughed federal worker special, as long as you fill a daytime slot with me, because my daytime slots, of course, don't fill up as quickly as my evening and weekend slots. I was thinking about doing that. I've also done other specials for nurses, for Nursing Day, because I have a lot of nurse clients. And then I have like standing specials because like you, I have specials by time. Like, I have a half an hour session, an hour session. But then I have something called a pet reading session.
Right, right. So, okay, a pet reading.
Yeah.
You sit down, and there's a special parameter. We're reading about your pet. Do other things come up in that? And what do you do when they do?
Then they have to book another reading. I mean, that's just the deal. Now, it depends. Like with the pet reading, it's only a 30-minute session. So I really want to devote the time to whatever it is that they're interested in. But I've done other readings in the past where I've done mediumship readings where we're just going to focus on what's crossed over, past life readings. I've also been thinking about, I typically don't do couple readings.
Really?
No, I usually see in separate.
I love couples readings.
So I was thinking about introducing that in February only. For Mother's Day, I've done mother and child readings though, where they sit together, and that has been so much fun to do, like mom and daughter, mom and son readings. I've done that as well.
Oh, that's beautiful. So what is the format like on a mother and child reading? What is that format like?
It depends on what they want, but usually they're sitting at the table with me. Sometimes they want to do a reading on their relationship together and how it's moving forward, and I'll do a reading on that. Or one of them has a particular issue that they're both, connected to in some way. So, I mean, I think I got this from you, Christiana. It's really nice when you have 2 people there, because the person that you read for may have resistance for the message, right? And then the other person's like, oh, no, that's accurate. That's accurate.
No, make them own it. Yeah, that's exactly what I say to them. Yes, make them own it.
Yeah, so I feel like there's always this sweet spot between not overcomplicating an offering and then making people confused, but then also making sure you're communicating clearly enough so they feel it, what they're purchasing or scheduling is fitting what they kind of feel that they need. Do you find that to be the case?
Unless a client really wants, like once in a while, a client will say, okay, I've got a very specific focus. But very typically in my practice, I don't want to know what they want to know. I want to see what I see first. And 9 times out of 10, it'll come up the way, the way that they would expect it to. If it doesn't, that really means something, like whatever they think is the biggest issue, well, there's all these other issues too. And I will answer their questions, but I kind of start with, let me see what I see. And so if I'm doing a couple, I'm going to do that. I figure there's 3 people in a couple, right? This person, entity that the couple is. So I'm reading for those 3 people. And I'll do like 5, 10, 15 minutes on person A with person B sitting right there. And then I'll move over 5, 10, 15 minutes, whatever it is, on person B, and see how they show up in each other's readings. Which is fun because often the partner will be the crossing card. Oh, look, you're your partner's biggest problem, right? And then I like to look at their hands. In person, the one thing I love about in-person readings is to look at hands, because you can really see a lot. If you put the 2 hands together, you can really see what the dynamic of the couple is. And that's real fun. And then I'll do a thing where I pull card. I do like a 3-card reading, 1 card for one, the other card for the other, 3rd card for the middle. You know, what we are, who the couple is. So telling. There's so much there. And then I'll take questions. So whatever they wanted to work out, if it hasn't come out yet, that's when we're going to work it out.
Mm-hmm. I think you and I have a bit of a different reading style. I don't do that. I'm just going to open it up and see what the cards say. I'm really like, what would you like to know? What's on your mind? What are you feeling? And then from there, the client and I together formulate questions to move forward. But if they feel like, oh, I really don't know, that's when I often move to Lenormand. And then from Lenormand, I will do a grand tableau, which is kind of the big picture overview of 6 months to a year. And then I'll knock it out from there. So if they're like, I don't know, I'm just looking for just a general, I don't know, like whatever's kind of happening, then I move to Lenormand for that. But I keep tarot for more of my like specific and targeted questions. And then I typically end sessions with oracle card pulling, like I'll pull from like an animal deck that I have. And that always, I find that the message of the oracle card just kind of really wraps up usually that we've been talking about together.
Sure.
So yeah, that's typical. They come in, I offer them tea or water, and away we go. So
yeah, I think it's very interesting that I think I cannot imagine that any 2 professional readers do it exactly the same way. You know, I think it's a very unique thing. Whereas like if you go to massage therapists, there's a general, like you kind of know what to expect. If you go to the dentist, you know, many different dental hygienists, it's going to be the same thing. You know, you know what's going to happen. In a tarot reading, I think each reader really does it a particular way. Each one has their own way into spirit and to what happens there. Don't you think?
Yeah, you know, I think you just made such a good point, especially for the people that are listening that may not be pro or partially pro, and they may feel insecure, uncertain about their approach. And I think that's really great. Like all of us have our own approaches. Your approach is going to be like hone your own approach. Don't try to be somebody else's approach.
Right. And, you know, one thing I think is very interesting that if you start a reading by, you know, essentially asking them to say what's up with them, you know, or what their concerns are, or what they want to get out of the session, I would say you avoid what is for me the very most stressful part of the reading, which I call the great opening line. Because I have no idea why they're there or what they want. I've just laid out 11 cards, and the first thing that comes out of my mouth is not in any way connected to anything I know about them. It's really what I'm feeling and what I'm seeing and where that, you know, wherever that's going to come from. And that is it's an important part of the reading for me, and it's fun to see how that fits in later. But you don't have that stress.
Well, you know, I think when some people come to me, they'll say, well, no, you tell me. Like they want me to tell them why they're there as a kind of litmus test for clairvoyance.
Right,
like,
which is kind of how I'm doing it. Yes.
Right.
Let me just get you on board right here.
Right. So my response to that is trust my process. You know, my background is, you know, organizational psychology, leadership, and coaching. So I'm coming at this from a very specific perspective about the co-creation of that we are having a conversation, and this is a and like you said, there's 3 people in the room. There's myself, there's the client, and there's spirit, and we're all talking to each other. It's like a 3-way kind of thing going. So what I tell them is, I get that my way of doing it may be what you're not used to, but I guarantee by the end of the session, you know, the clairvoyance is going to come through. You're going to see and hear things that how did I know? Like, we're going to have that point. I just tell them, you're paying me good money. I'd rather spend time going exactly at what you want to go for and not waste 10 minutes getting there. But I don't think that there's a wrong or right way. I think both are very valid ways. And so because we all have different styles, clients have such a plethora of people to choose from. So that is good. So I always tell people, like, finding your reader is like finding your hairstylist. You can, you know, like, there's a synergy there that you know that you have with that person. But just because you got a bad haircut over here doesn't mean that that person is now a bad hairstylist. The energy just didn't work.
So how do you feel about, and do you have clients who also see other readers? Do you see it like they're cheating on you? Are you okay with it? How do you feel about that?
Oh, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it. Yeah. Like, and I think it's helpful. Like, sometimes, you know, we all say things in different ways. We approach it in a different way. And maybe they need it from another facet or angle that I'm not going to get at exactly. I'm not intimidated or like threatened at all when people go to other. In fact, they come back when they need what I have to offer. I'm fine with that.
Right.
What about you? You're cool too? I think you're.
I'm very cool. I mean, I really don't want them handing over their life savings to a neon light person. You know, I'm not cool with that. But, you know, I'll refer to other people, as you have. You know, we've referred to each other. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's good to get a number of different perspectives for exactly the reason we're talking about, that we're all different, that we all bring different skills to the table. And I think, you know, the point that in tarot, there's probably a wider diversity of what a tarot reading looks like, depending on the reader, versus, you know, any other sort of service-oriented career. You know, it's an interesting thing. And I think it allows us each to bring our own particular skills to the table, which is why I don't think there will ever be market saturation.
What I find interesting is how each of you are kind of dancing or moving around the same issue of the querent doesn't necessarily know what they want sometimes.
Right.
But you've each approached it from a different perspective. Christiana, you're just like, let me figure out for you what it is that you're here for. And Jenna, you're like, let's get to the point, let's figure it out. And if you don't have it, then you know, you take the grand tableau and let spirit guide and let the cards communicate that. And I imagine that for each of you, there was some pain point in your process that brought you to those decisions on how you move now, that you've built your synergy and you've built your momentum as readers from those experiences, and how that energizes and works with how you read as an individual. I'm curious if you guys could kind of give me some examples for people who are out there getting started. Like, what were the things you banged your head against getting things going that other people could learn from, that brought you to the kind of reader that you are today?
Wow, good question. Jenna, do you have an answer right off the bat? I'm cogitating on that for a minute.
I think I need a little more detail, Rix, like in terms of like what can you drill down that a little bit more?
Well, yeah, I mean, just thinking in terms of this one thing, the querent doesn't know what they want. They don't know what they want to ask. What was it that led you, Jenna, to your approach of just like, I'm going to, like, in my marketing, tell you here's how you ask a good question so that you come prepared. Whereas Christiana, you made the choice to like just to don't even do that front work with them until they're sitting there in front of you. Like, what kind of lessons did you learn through the process that got you to that point for you as individuals?
Oh man, I
Or
have
was it just intuitive? You were just like, no, this is how I'm going to do it. You know, did you just know?
Yes, from the very beginning, when I was first going to tarot reading class at the local New Age store and reading for my friends to practice, I think because, you know, I learned my favorite spread way back then, and the spread was so comprehensive, and what I wanted to do was like, let me see what cards would come up for you. If you sit here, I want to put these cards out and see what comes up. I'm so curious what the cards are going to say. I don't really care about your questions. I'm curious. And, you know, probably I would be like a really super gossip. If I were not a tarot reader, I would be the worst gossip in the world because I just want to know. I want to know everything about every person.
Well, they're not mutually exclusive. You can do both. You're not limited.
Yeah, but one's healing and one's not so much.
Right.
So I think it was that. I think it was from the very beginning, recognizing that if I put cards in front of you, I am going to see so much about what's going on. And then from there, we'll have a conversation and questions will come up. And often I supply the questions too, where,
right,
you know, it's like really clear. Okay, I see here, we got this question, this question, this question. And there it is. I think what I have to work on, though, is sometimes there is a question I don't see, and I have to be able to give my client room to ask it. Because I get so excited about them and what's going on and what I think they need to know. It's important for me to pull back and say, well, what do you think you need to know? Which is, I think, where Jenna starts to begin with.
Let me make a caveat with that, because there are times where I'm getting clairvoyant hits so loud and so strongly before I even pull any cards that I'll just be like, let's stop. I need to talk at you right now. and
Right.
It may not make a lot of sense and it may sound really disjointed, and that's okay, but it's being recorded. And then it will make sense to you later on. Like as I feel called to do that, if I'm getting a big download, I will go that way first, for sure. One thing I really worked with my students over the summer with the Tarot Caravan course was that sometimes even the question that the person asks is not the real question. It's a very surface level question. And so they're giving this like very surface level question because they themselves haven't actually thought about what's really wrong. All they're doing is that they're feeling that something's really wrong. So part of the work that I do with them with tarot is, let's get to the knot. Let's get to the question, the real thing from which all of this is underpinning on. And then I'm going to answer directly that thing, the foundational issue. So sometimes there is a conversation that happens between the two of us where we drill down. No, that's not actually what you're here for. There's pain here, and let's get to that. And that's what we're going to answer. And I know, Christiana, you've seen this where we'll try to read on one thing, and then you have a total tarot override, and the tarot is like, nope, we don't care about that at all. We're going to read about this girl, whether you like it or not, right?
So true.
Well, that's a really good point, and I think that's the kind of thing that it takes allowing for the opportunity, because we hear all the time, you know, the cards answer the question, like focus on what the querent was asking and see what the card said to that. But you're right, sometimes the tarot says, hold on, we've got other stuff we need to deal with, and you got to be open to that. And it's interesting to me how you each make room for that in different ways in your approach. I want to take just a moment to welcome all the new people that have popped in here, and let you know I've got you guys on mute, and we've got your video shut off to make the bandwidth run more smoothly. If you have questions, we want to hear them. Just drop them into the chat, and I'll kind of monitor those things as Jenna and Christiana continue to spout their wisdom for us, and we'll get to you guys and your questions as they come in. So feel free to drop those questions in the chat at any time. Jenna, I noticed that you do something Oh, there's the real star of the show tonight. You want to introduce your friend?
Oh, this is my new friend. I can't decide on a name. I think we're circling on Gretchen. So I think she just wanted to come and say hello to everybody.
Look at that face. That is the best face.
So Jenna, I wanted you to talk, and I think you might have mentioned this last time, your technique where you do the overhand shuffle and see what cards pop up.
Yeah. So this is something kind of, I don't know. Like, I don't know if Christiana, you find new techniques and you're like, oh, there's this thing that's been talking to me that I just realized. So one of the things I do is, like, say a client's talking to me about a situation and I shuffle the cards. I don't let my clients shuffle. And the only reason why is that they'll say, oh, I'm a terrible shuffler. And then they get all anxious about it. And I don't want them to be anxious.
And they bend the cards, so the cards fly all over. It's a bad thing.
So I do the shuffling. So while they're talking, I'll shuffle. But a technique I found is I do an overhand shuffle. So I'll shuffle with I don't know if everyone can see, with my cards face up. And I'll look at this main card at the bottom, and then that card, the devil, and then that card, the lovers. Oh, that's interesting. And then Page of Swords, and then the Hierophant. Do you see? So as I'm shuffling, I'm looking down, and I'm getting a 3 to 4 card spread just in the overhand shuffle. And that often is giving me answers and keying me for information before we've even put any cards down on the table.
I do the same thing with a different shuffle. That's so cool. I've never talked to anybody about this.
Really?
So, yes. So that's really, really cool. Because I will break the deck to do a riffle, and I'll look at, okay, there's that. Look, 2 8s. Oh, very interesting. Riffle. And then I might look at what has come up on the bottom, and then I might do it again. And so, yeah, I'm doing exactly the same thing. And I'm also looking for if those cards then come up in the spread. You know, that's even more significant.
Right,
yeah.
All right, we've got a few questions dropping in here. Dragon's Labyrinth asks, how do you determine rates? People say I don't charge enough. How do you ladies approach the question that can often be a very sticky subject?
I want to tell a quick story, and then I want to defer to Jenna, because even in my second edition of Fortune Stellar, I give Jenna props for her rate thing, your metric. I think that's what I called it. I said Jenna Matlin has an interesting metric. So I just have to tell this quick story that I went through one big rate hike when I moved from Pennsylvania to West Palm Beach. I really needed to increase my rates. I almost doubled them. The interesting thing was 90% of my clients, my phone clients, all of that stayed with me, even with the doubled rates. But I didn't do as well in West Palm Beach as I should have. And it turned out that the people, especially on the island, on Palm Beach Island, thought I couldn't be any good because at $150 an hour, I was half what they wanted to pay. So, you know, depending on where you are demographically, I would have done better going in at $300 an hour versus $150, which, you know, whatever. So that was just my weird story. Jenna, how should we do it?
Well, I'm guessing like what you're talking about is kind of the metric that I've used, which is peg yourself to what a massage therapist in your area makes.
Yeah.
So in my area, a massage therapist is going to charge easily $100 to $120 for an hour of their time. And I think that that's a really good beginning litmus test. I think that one of the dangers is charging too low. When you charge too low, you're getting the quality of clients may not be at the level that feels good for you and the work that you want to do. But also, as you start to raise your rates, as you get good reviews, as people start to find out about you, that gets harder to do because they're used to the lower rate. Finally, the science of pricing, as Christiana kind of said, is it's mystical as well as mathematical. So you have what people want to pay, what you're known to do. You have to look at your business expenses and go, okay, well, I've got an office and I've got to buy insurance for myself. And there's a whole business plan process to all of that. So even though I charge $110, after business expenses, I'm probably really netting $50.
Right. Oh, that's so true. That's so true.
So people don't think about that. You know, a lot of new professional readers are like buying hundreds and hundreds of decks, and they're like, oh, I could write it off. And I'm like, yes, you could write it off, but that's still not money for rent or food or electric.
So true.
You have to watch your outflows as much as your inflows as a business owner. So I hope that helps Dragon's Labyrinth.
And, you know, if I can say one other thing too, asking for your money, to ask for your money. The first time I had to quote, like a big quote, it was like for a big party. So, you know, this was years ago. So it was probably like me taking a huge breath and asking for $400, which now for a party I might ask for, you know, 2 or 3 times a day, whatever. But at the time, it was like, that's $400. And it was hard. It's hard to get that out. It's hard, you know, it's hard. Ask for your money. If you believe you're worth it, people are happy to pay it.
Yeah, how do you ladies in your past or with other readers around you see like that scale up? You know, somebody who's new starting out doesn't feel confident yet in asking for those kind of rates. Maybe, you know, they're like, you know, doing readings at restaurants or at new age shops or something like that, kind of trying to get their foot in the door, and they don't feel like they're worth $120 an hour yet. Did you see yourselves? I mean, Christiana, you talked about your change in location, but like when you started in Pennsylvania, did you ramp up? You know, did you have like a ladder that you climbed?
I did, and you know, I made the very mistake that Jenna said you shouldn't make. I started actually first in Connecticut. I've moved my business a bunch over time, and when I first started, I was $10 for a half hour, $20 for an hour. I know Jenna's covering her face. Now, this was, okay, I've been doing this for a long time. This would have been 1993 or 4, somewhere in there. So quite some time ago, but still way too cheap, way too cheap. And so then I really had to work to increase, you know, and get to a better place. But I think Rick's comment is good. As with any field, people who have been doing it for longer, people who have written books, people who have a reputation get to charge more. When you're first starting out, there is that idea that you might charge a little bit less. At that point, I would look at what the New Age shops are charging. You know, if you go in for a half hour reading at a New Age shop, what does that cost? That's probably a good entry place for you.
There's something else I want to mention about prices. I was always really concerned in the beginning about making sure that I was pricing myself in a way where the average person could come and afford a session with me. Mm-hmm. I got to be honest, one of my pet peeves is seeing a reader come out of nowhere, charging $300 for 45 minutes. And I'm like, who are you? Like, dang, you're greedy. Like, I mean, you do whatever you need to do. But to me, I've always strived to make myself affordable. So I want people to come see me. I don't want to just deal with the richest people. I want to deal with the people with all the kids and you know, drives a Ford and not an Audi. You know, I want to make sure that I am pricing myself within the demographics of people that I like working with.
That you want to work with. Well, that's just it. I priced myself too low for the Palm Beach Island people.
Right.
But I found a demographic that worked really well. So yeah, I think that's a really good point. Price yourself to the demographic you want to serve.
Yeah, and I think, you'll see that, when you raise your rates and find that sweet spot where you're targeting the Ford drivers who will ask a question that they want to go somewhere in their life, that kind of question. You're pricing yourself out of the people who just want to, I'm going to say be lazy, and let the universe tell them how to live their lives. They're not doing any kind of internal work for themselves. So your price point is weeding out some of that demographic for you. But yeah, it's a question of like who's going to get through the door and when they see that dollar sign.
Right.
That brings another thought to mind, is that sometimes I'll have clients bulk at my rate because they're comparing me to the neon sign readers. Or they'll be like,
$10 and a Rolex.
Right. And they're like, well, can't you fit me in today? No, I have availabilities next week. If I'm someone that has 50 5-star reviews on Google, 45 5-star reviews on Yelp, what makes you think I'm available to take you same day? Like, if you want a really good reading with someone that has a track record, you're going to have to wait a little bit. Now,
just like a hairdresser.
Right.
My hairdresser's booked out for 2 months, absolutely.
So, I'm like, I'm not like a neon sign reader where I'm open from 10 a.m. till 10 p.m. I got stuff to do. I'm not just waiting for anyone to walk in. But that the neon sign readers can create, I think, an unrealistic expectation. The neon sign readers have a low bar of entry. I just show up, I give you $10, and then you're going to tell me I don't know, I've heard horrible things, Christiana, like I was a rapist in a past life and now I have to clear the karma of that. Like, I've literally had a client tell me that. I could not, like, that's so damaging. How could you do that to somebody?
Well, because their code of ethics is the more that they can rip off people, the better they're doing. That really is it's a very specific cultural code of ethics, which is very different from our own.
Yeah, and I constantly see that in the good readers that I'm associating with, that it's a battle. You're cleaning up the mess that's out there and clearing the name of tarot. To not just be something that is a way to take advantage of people, but a way to help people.
Right.
Anita asks, and this was in reference to other people not shuffling your cards. So you don't think that the querent getting their energies on the cards is necessary. How do you ladies feel about the energy of the querent and how that affects the reading?
I do readings on the other side of the world. I work with Skype, FaceTime, Messenger, telephone, more than I do in person. And even an in-person reading, I may or may not let you touch my cards. I really believe that, like, having the querent cut the deck, which I will do if you come into my office and you're not coughing and sneezing on your hands, you can cut my deck. But I think that that's just tradition. For me, the energy, when I make an energetic connection with the client, it's got nothing to do with the cards. It's me, it's the client. If we're in the same room, if we're on the other side of the world, I'm still making that connection with you. And so you don't need to touch the cards.
Yeah, I agree with you, but there is a technique that I do when I have in-person clients. So as we're having a little, as I said in the beginning, conversations, or they're like, oh, me and this guy, Jim, I don't know. I'll be shuffling the cards. I'll be looking at the cuts. And at that point, I actually give them the deck to hold. So they're not shuffling, but they're holding the deck. And I have them close their eyes. And then together we go through a very quick mini meditation. Mm-hmm. And it's just, they change. Like, I get inspired on what I need to say to them. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, so it's really nice, especially if someone is coming upset, because it really gets them to kind of focus. I'll tell them, like, introduce yourself to the deck. It's a way where we're creating that, like, buy-in and creating that co-creative aspect. Mm-hmm. And I enjoy having that moment to just breathe with everybody. But on distance readings, I mean, I can still do that with them, but of course they can't physically touch the deck. But like you, once we've made the connection is beyond, it's metaphysical. You know what I mean?
Right. Yes. And it's beyond cardboard, really.
Yeah. And Dragon's Lab chimed in to say that they never let anybody touch their cards. My take on the idea of energy and how it moves is that, you know, as with most magic, what's true for you is true for you. You know, if you believe it, then that's affecting you in some way. If you feel like you need somebody to connect with the cards in order to be able to read for them, then that's probably true for you. And you can run with that, or you can experiment and let something else be true for you as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Keep the questions coming, guys. We love hearing from you and love what you guys have to ask. We've had some new people come in, so welcome. Keeping everybody's videos shut off so that we keep the bandwidth low, but feel free to drop in the chat and ask the questions you want to ask.
Yeah, ask your questions now. Do not wait until 9:55.
Like every single client. I'm sorry. No, I mean, that's a thing. Doctors call it doorknob syndrome. That when you go to a doctor, you're not going to say the real reason you want to talk to the doctor until the doctor's got their hand on the doorknob and is and you know, and I think that was probably, honestly, to answer Rick's earlier question, how I came to my method. I think I was so sick of doorknob syndrome to some extent that I'm like, okay, I'm going to gather all of the questions right here, right now. So yeah, there's that too.
Well, and I like that you said, you know, you leave room at the end for them to ask questions, so that, you know, what other things that you might have seen and brought to their attention might spur, you know, other thoughts in there. How do you approach that as the time is running out, though? You know, like, I mean, how do you keep that concise at the end? So
I really try. There's a couple things. I will, with each topic, okay, so I do my overview. Okay, that's an 11-card Celtic cross spread. I don't tend to talk about the cards. It's just what I see, and that'll give some information, but also some, you know, what the questions are. And then I'll say, okay, these are the questions I see. I'm really curious about these things. I think we need to look at these things. How does this match your agenda? And they'll usually say, yes, that's exactly what I want. But they might also say, well, that's good, and I've got this and this and this. So now I know, and I'm looking at the clock, and I can kind of divide that up. And I'll handle then each question separately as a separate reading. And then before I'll move on, I'll say, okay, is there anything else you want to know? So say we're talking about work. Anything else you want to know about work and career before we move on to your love life? And so that way we're kind of handling each department of life. At the end, I try to do an overview. Okay, so the most important points, the key themes are, any other questions? And that's when any other extraneous thing can come in.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah, it's where it's at now. I mean, as you mentioned, it does sort of morph over time, but it's where it's at now.
You know, I also think that sometimes those doorknob questions are like so huge. So right now I have 30-minute sessions, which I call quick look, and then I have hour-long sessions. And sometimes people want to really shove an hour's worth of topics into the 30 minutes. And so I think it's important to also have boundaries. So it's like, even though you're wanting the cheapest option and you're trying to get everything in, I can't do this topic justice, and I can't do you justice by trying to cram everything in this time frame. Sometimes we're just going to need more time in order to unpack, very complicated situations. Like, say someone's about to go through a divorce, and there's the court issue, the kid issue, the in-law issue, the am I ever going to date again issue. And that's a lot. So I also have another option that I started maybe in the fall, Christiana, where we have 1 hour together, and then you have 2 follow-up half an hours.
Ooh.
as like a package. So those are for people that have those really complicated kind of situations, or they're trying to move through something, and we just kind of need like a quick hit 2 times to make sure that whatever change we're trying to initiate or whatever they're trying to go through, that we're like tracking along with it. And that's actually been a very popular option as well.
I like that. That's a good one. See, I'm going to steal that.
Go for it. I'm going to take your Mercury retrograde idea. So.
No, that's worked really well.
I was curious about the Mercury retrograde. Like, I mean, do you not run into issues of communication trying to get these set up?
Well, okay. Not so much.
That's good.
I love Hermes. I have this like great spiritual connection to Hermes. And I really believe that Hermes came to me in a dream and told me to do this as a way of honoring that time of retrograde. That retrograde as a time of reviewing and rewriting and releasing is such a powerful time for a tarot reading. So in a Mercury retrograde session, we're there to look at what is the story you've been telling about your life, how do we review it, and how do we rewrite it in a way that makes it more true so you can release the things you need to release. And there's your Mercury retrograde session.
That's
and
good.
The energy of Mercury retrograde provides a great support for that, really. So I'm sorry, last year we had a bunch of retrogrades, and I wish this had really solidified for me about a year ago, because then I would have done all the retrogrades.
Right.
Don't you hate it when you get an idea late in the game? You're like, oh, why did I think about this until now?
And then you literally have to wait for the stars to align again to be able to take advantage of it.
Literally.
M. Garcia asks, reading for friends and people you know, do you do it? Do you think there's a bias? I want to build on that and say reading for yourself. How does that affect it? Whether it's close friend, partner?
So if I can jump in on this, because I've got very strong opinions on this. I really believe that one of the great skills tarot reading teaches us is compassionate detachment. And that in order to be a great tarot reader for anyone, you have got to be able to see the bias, because of course it's there, acknowledge the bias, and put yourself into a place of spiritual neutral, of compassionately detaching from caring about outcome in the way that you do for a friend or for yourself or whatever, and do the reading. So yes, I do the reading, and I really try to do this whole process. And in learning the process of compassionate detachment, we learn a lot about self-care, and we learn a lot about how to be non-judgmental in all situations in life. Jenna, what do you think?
Your compassionate non-attachment reminds me of something I heard a psychologist say, but I thought was very true for us as well. And that is this: don't work harder than your client. And I was like, yeah. You know what I mean? Like, don't work harder than your client. Like if they're not doing like the work, I'm not going to, I'm going to take you to a place. I'm going to say, this is where you need to go, but I can't do that for you. So part of that is part of that non-attachment, I think, which is like, I can't do this for you. I can't fix this for you. I can give you the information. For me, bias is something I see a lot of tarot readers do in a way that troubles me, just within tarot itself. Yes. So when I see someone like, oh, that Hierophant, I don't like him, he's a jerk, like the Pope, or like, oh, Queen of Swords, she's such a, hardball person. And I'm like, you're putting your bias all over the cards. And
Thank you. Yes.
When you do that, you're no longer a clear reader. So I see a big problem with that in general with readers. It's something I really work hard against. Like that Knight of Swords doesn't mean evil. The devil, like we have to take it within context. So any issues with any cards that you have means work that you have to do as a reader.
Yay! Yes, yes. I am so 100% with you on this. Oh my gosh, yes.
So you got to get your own stuff with the tarot sorted
Yeah.
before you can read for anybody else.
Yes.
Two, I know that I'm starting to get biased when I get overly emotional. Like for me, readings are quite unemotional. They're very like, here's the data, here's the information that's kind of being downloaded. But if I'm like, you need to leave him, he's terrible, like that is like that's me putting my opinion in on it. And so I have to make sure that I can have it, but it's compartmentalized from what's being downloaded. And then finally, if I do feel too close to the situation, I won't read. Like if I feel I don't know if I'll read this clearly enough, and then I'll go to another reader and say, can you look at this for me? Can you read for me?
Yeah, we need to read for each other. That's a fact. That's true.
Thank you, ladies, for that. Marion asks, how do you handle those clients that are cynics and book readings with the purpose of trying to disprove you? Marion apparently had one of them yesterday.
Jenna, do you have a thought on that one?
You guys did touch on this with your approach to the question, but I think this is probably a little like more hardcore along those lines.
I would say in general, I don't get these people probably because I charge too much and cynics don't want to spend money to prove me wrong. But that being said, there are two kinds of cynics. The first one are open-minded cynics or skeptical, but open-minded. I love those guys because I'm able to shift their whole cosmology often in one session. Love it. In terms of cynics trying to disprove me, I see it kind of as a challenge. You know, and I don't know, like it doesn't faze me. Maybe it did in the beginning, but I don't care what you think of me, man. And if you're coming to disprove me, like, don't you have better things to do? But meanwhile, let's talk about the hip replacement that you need. Oh, your hip is hurting? Oh, yeah. How did I know that? Like, usually, I kind of get feisty. What about you, Christiana?
Exactly the same. Exactly the same. Bring it. Just freaking bring it, man. I will say my evil Scorpio tail will want to come out. And in a case like this, my great opening line may be less kind than, or less gently delivered than it otherwise would be. Because if I can make you cry in the first 3 minutes, we're going to have a good session.
Right.
Brutally honest, dude. Love it.
Sorry. There it is.
You know, and even though, you know, you might price out most of the cynics, but if you're doing a party where somebody else is footing the bill,
right, that's
you
true.
Still tend to get those.
Well, what do you think, Rick? So you've done parties where you've had cynics come to you. How did you handle it?
I just roll with the punches. I mean, parties are an interesting venue because you'll get such a smattering of people, you know, from all across the spectrum. Somebody who's truly cynical and doesn't want to be open to it at all will probably not ask a good question, for one. And I find that for me as a reader in a party setting, the lack of a good question just means the cards are going to kind of vomit. And we don't have time in 10 minutes to really sort through all your vomit and figure out what you and the tarot can agree on here. So I usually, you know, just kind of steel myself for the fact that this is going to be just 10 minutes of just kind of playing around. This person is here for entertainment. I'll do my best to entertain you. Maybe try to work up the mystical woo aspect of it a bit to make you feel like you've had some fun here because it's a party after all. Whereas folks that are the skeptics, that are open-minded, usually wind up being the ones that do cry. You know, you see something in the cards that there's no way that they feel like there's, you know, that you could have picked this up about them, and it just blows their mind, and it's just a beautiful thing to witness. And I you know, then that encourages you, of course, as a reader, having that experience yourself, and just, you know, makes you feel all that much more validated and glad that you can help bring somebody to that catharsis that they obviously needed And that was probably the whole reason that they sat at this table, even if it wasn't the question that they originally thought they were going to ask.
That's well said.
Dragon's Labyrinth asks, how do you handle the vampire clients that constantly reach out and want weekly and more than once a week readings? I'm going to build on this as well, because Jenna, I've noticed sometimes you might get querents who have like kind of piecemeal questions, like what about this and what about that and what about these other things? How do you handle those clients that are coming at you in ways that kind of drain your energy?
I feel like what you are illustrating and what Dragon's Labyrinth is talking about, there's a bit of a distinction between the two.
Sure. Yeah, I'm throwing these together, but they're not the same.
Thanks for making things so easy.
Well, let's answer Dragon's Labyrinth's question.
Okay. So I've noticed that that the readers that tend to attract the vampire clients tend to need to do some work around their boundaries, their energetic and their personal boundaries. And I think people that are those psychic vampires are drawn to healers. Narcissists, it's like if you're a healer and you want to help people, it's like you have a dog whistle that only narcissists can hear. So I think with those energetic vampires, the more clear your boundaries are and the more firmly you communicate with them, the less you're going to have that problem. I almost never have those kinds of clients that keep coming back, and I stop them. So if I do get a sense that somebody is using a tarot reading as a ritual to alleviate anxiety more than they're doing anything else, then I will try to slow it down and say, you know, you've been in a lot. I think we need to allow the work of the reading to sit, or we need to move through the prediction before I have you come in again. I'll stop them. I typically don't have people calling me a lot or texting me a lot. I'm very, very clear about my boundaries. In our time together, you have me 110%. But when it's not our time together, we can't be in that space together. So I think Dragon's Labyrinth, if you're having problems with these kind of clients, I would encourage you to look over your own explicit boundaries and see what might feel soft that a psychic vampire is going to try to like get in on. Does that make sense? Christiana, can you add anything on that?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't know if I've personally, in 25 plus years, I don't know if I've ever really experienced that. So I must have such boundaries that they don't even try it with me. I don't know. I have some very regular clients. I have one person who will sit with me for 2 to 3 hours at least once a week. But we're doing real work. And the minute I think we're not doing real work, we're not going to do it. And this person can most certainly afford me, and it works. So I don't feel, that it would feel excessive, that would be the word, excessive to some people, but in that relationship, it's okay. So I think it depends on the relationship.
Jenna, how do you express those boundaries? How do you go about cutting off a client when you feel like they're abusing? I mean, you talked about, asking time for the reading to do its work, but how do you broach that with somebody who's obviously feeling this need in a very agitated, probably sort of way?
If I think they need a therapist, then I'm going to refer them to a therapist rather than the work that I'm doing. I mean, there's been times where I've had people just send me walls of text, and I'll just straight up text them back and say, I cannot have this conversation with you right now. Like, I'm very, very clear. And I think as readers, we want to heal and we want to help. So there's this fear, like if I really say and speak what I need, then I'm going to piss them off or make them angry or let them down. But that's not how it works. The clearer your boundaries are, and being really explicit and kind means that you're more better able to show up fully present for the clients that you have without burnout. Like Christiana and I can both attest that this career path that you're choosing has a high burnout rate, guys. Like
Oh
there's
my gosh.
probably 90% of the people I know that started when I started are gone.
I once saw a woman younger than me who had been in it for a long time just get up from a table at a psychic fair and say, I do not care. I am not doing this ever again. And that was like her whole career out the window. Wow. Right. Right. It happens. It happens.
So when we have boundaries, it's not about being mean or bad or capitalistic. It's about protecting your own energy and your own life so that you can continue to do this work without burnout. Yeah. It's important. I cap my readings to 20 hours a week. I don't do more than 20 hours. I have sometimes people that want me for more than 20 hours? Yes, of course. But I am not a psychic mill. I refuse to just take whoever wants to give me money and be burnout and tired and give them a less than excellent version of myself. So that's how I look at it.
Thank you, ladies, for that. Anita asks about having clients that come in and want to compare you to their other regular reader. Have you ladies experienced that? And
Constantly. Constantly. I cannot answer for what another reader says. I'm interested in what the other reader says as compared to me, and I can kind of make the comparison and say, well, I see it this way, they see it that way. This is what's in common. But if it, it comes up a lot around the bane of our existence. But the other reader said we were soulmates and he would come back. Then my answer is I cannot answer for what another reader says.
I think one of my challenge points is when I have a client who's like, I read for 45 years with old Betty and she just died at 92 and I'm looking for my new Betty. I'm not going to be your new Betty. I'm going to have a completely different style and approach. So I feel like they're looking for that person and I can't be her. I don't know if you've ever had that where they...
Oh, yes, and I will not try to be Betty, but I will try to become your new go-to. I absolutely will.
I feel like there's a tone in some of the questions that I'm seeing in the chat box that I just want to bring to everyone's attention. And I feel like confidence really comes with just doing this enough where you feel that you can stand in your truth. So you can't wait to feel confident to do this work. You have to do this work and allow the body of your own work be the thing that is the foundation of your confidence.
Mm-hmm. It is very much a function of practice, without a doubt. I know we're coming near the end of our time, but I did want to address, there's a question from Anita about handling a client that wants to bring a friend into the reading with them. And what about when the energy gets muddled? I have never had a muddled energy problem except with pregnancy. If I read for a pregnant person, every freaking person for the rest of the day looks pregnant to me, even the men. And so there's that. But I love it when you bring a friend to have a reading. If you've got a friend that can do that process with you, that's a beautiful thing. I'll include the friend in the reading. I'll ask their opinion. I'll ask them for questions. And I don't have the energy drift. That doesn't happen for me. What about you, Jenna?
I typically do not allow other people in a session because I get muddled clairvoyant images.
Yeah.
And I'm like, who's this for? This is a poodle. Is it yours? No. It's yours. But in party sessions, festival sessions, psychic gallery sessions, and the special sessions that I talked about, I will allow it. But typically, no, I like one-on-one. That's just the way I tend to work. Yeah, that's just my deal. Maybe that'll change. That's another thing. It's like, I don't think anything Christiana and I have said in terms of technique or style is written in stone. I think it's like, okay, I'm going to do this for a while. All right, well, let me try this for a while. See how that feels for me.
It morphs. It really does. Over time, your style and what happens and the way you get your information will morph.
All right, do we have time for one more? I think we got one unanswered question out there.
Sure.
What about incorporating tarot with other modalities like Reiki, astrology, sound therapy, numerology?
That's Jenna's thing.
Yeah, I incorporate tarot numerology. I think it's a great addition in a session. I do sound therapy where I do chakra balancing, aura clearings, and it's nice. Like I do this full time, so I like when someone signs up for another modality. It switches up the day sometimes. I have people wanting me to come out and do house clearings now. I do those on a very occasional basis.
I'm doing one of those this weekend, in fact. Yeah.
So I don't know, like, but I only do the things that I feel like I'm confident in. So I'm not an astrologer. I don't do Reiki. I refer out for those modalities that I'm not myself proficient in. But yeah, I do definitely mix and match what I do, and it makes the day go by, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Do you match them in the same session? Like your chakra attunement, does that also include a reading, or are you just focusing on one or the other in a session?
It really depends. Like tonight I had someone who just signed up for an hour and a half's worth of chakra balancing, but I felt she needed a reading before we moved into that space. So we spent the first half hour kind of looking at a reading that was really helpful for her. And it kind of like settled the energy enough that allowed us to sit and do some work on the table. So I just kind of feel that out actually when they come in. And sometimes people will come in not wanting a chakra balancing at all, but their energy is super agitated. And I feel like this chick needs some sage smudging. I'm going to like sage her up. We're going to do a little like quick little clearing and send her on her way. So I will do that.
I think that's a good thing. I often want to do that. I can see that they need it. And I don't really have the training particularly. So I refer out. But I think it's great that you can do that. I think if a person has other skills or modalities, there's always a way to bring it in and blend it in. And it, I think, helps make your unique brand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, I think we are at our time. I want to thank both of you ladies for sharing your deep and amazing wisdom with all of us. I want to thank everybody for dropping into the chat and participating. And what else is on the forefront for these sessions?
Well, the first thing I want to mention is that this will be recorded and uploaded. Christiana, you're going to put it on your YouTube, right?
I sure will.
Probably in a couple days when it gets uploaded, and like there's a whole process. So we'll do that, and then I think we're going to plan to do one more
in February in the lead up to Northwest Tarot Symposium and our Professional Development Day.
Yeah, so if you are coming to Portland or considering it, come see us and spend a full day of this, right?
Yeah. Focus. So this has been informal. It's going to be focused, and it's going to be focused not on us, but on you.
That's right. So I want to thank you all for coming. You know, what we do is so special, often misunderstood. We are definitely in the minority in terms of career choices. So to have a moment where we all get to talk about the things that are on our mind, I think is really special. So thank you all for coming. I'm so glad you're here. Christiana, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for hosting, and Rix, thank you for moderating. That was fabulous. I just have to here. She's on way the other side of the world. And so it must be like some god-awful hour here. So thank you for being up really late.
Christiana, you froze on that. Who is it who you're giving a shout out to?
Tasha Lee.
Oh my God,
Tasha,
Tasha, isn't it like 2 a.m. for you? Hi. Thanks for coming.
That's dedication.
Indeed. 3 a.m.
3 a.m. Wow.
You poor thing. Well,
We need to let Tasha get back to bed.
That's right.
Or to the party, whatever's going on.
Yeah, whatever it is, yeah.
All right,
friends. So keep an eye out on Jenna and Christiana's information channels for when the next one will come up in February. And they hope they see you in Portland as well. Thank you, everybody.
Yes. Sign up.
Thank you. Bye-bye,
Have a
everyone.
wonderful night.